So I told these young men and young women in the beginning that they had a choice. Elaine and Robbie and I all made it clear that this was not something that you have to do. Confirmation is not something that's required by the church. It's not the law. If you decide not to do it, that's perfectly okay. And you notice my son's not here. The pastor's kid opted out, so that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I'm glad and happy, just as if these were all my own kids, that they're here today making this commitment, and that's exactly what it is. We started off by saying that we're not going to tell you what to believe. We're not going to teach you what faith looks like or what it should be comprised of. Instead, we're going to teach you to think on your own and hopefully create an awareness so that you yourselves can experience God. We talk about theology and things like that, but theology really, when we think about it, isn't the study of God, because who could study the unknown? Instead, theology is just a history of ideas that mostly men, and now in more modern times women, have come up with about God. But to really experience God, there has to be an awareness. And that's, I hope, what we have created in these youth has given them the freedom to open their minds, to unlock their will, if you will. Because they came into it, I'm sure, wondering, what does the church require? What is the law? What does the church teach? What must we know and believe about God? But I didn't want to ruin it for them like that, because after all, the church didn't create God. The church has tried, I believe. But God created the church, just like God created us. And so our responsibility isn't merely to know who or what God is, but to experience God so that our lives might be fulfilled. And when Jesus, empowered by God with the Spirit of God within him, speaking to all of the people, to all the disciples, a message for years and years and years to come, he said, I have one commandment. I'm going to wrap it all up for you nice and simple into a nice little bow. In our 6 weeks of confirmation, likewise, you're like, well, why do we have to sit and listen to you for 6 weeks? That's explained in one word, but that commandment was love. Love one another as I have loved you. How simple that sounds, and indeed how simple it is. And think about it. Love, if we experience it, if we feel it for one another, our actions are going to reflect it. We're going to have everybody's best interests at heart. We're going to do on behalf of one another because we genuinely love them, whether we know them or not. And this is really the key to humaneness, the key to humanity. Love. And it's also that knowledge that God also loves us. Through some mysterious, miraculous way, God dwells within us and in all of creation, persuading us to act and speak and feel in an attitude of love for one another. And so there will be times when, for lack of better words, life will suck. And you'll want to check out. You want to wave the white flag and throw your hat in the ring, go down the towel and say, I'm done. Sometimes literally, and sometimes figuratively. But as much as all of you make a commitment to the church today, to all of us, because the church is not this building. The church is the people's city. Right? It's about human relationships. Likewise, we make a commitment to you. A commitment to model what love looks like. A model to do our best to be godly, knowing that we're going to fall on our faces just like you will. But a commitment to pick one another up, to walk with one another, sometimes ahead of you to make a way so that your lives might be easier, and sometimes beside you because sometimes we haven't figured it out ourselves. But it's a commitment to one another based on one plain and simple commandment, and that is love. So, today's not my day to flap my jaws. I get to do that all the other weeks. Today's your day. So who's our first victim? Presenter.
It's been an honor to spend this time with these young people, and I'd like to introduce now our first presenter, which is Jack Henry Shimabukuro.
First, I would like to thank Mr. Lovestrand for being my mentor and lending me his wisdom. And also, I would like to thank my family for always being supportive and loving. I didn't know what I was going to do for confirmation until a week ago. As I make a big step in my Christian faith, I thought it was only appropriate for me to address my spiritual journey to this point. Even though I am so grateful to become a member in his family, I can't say I didn't have my doubts. Ever since I could remember, the Christian faith has had a strong influence on my life. I always knew there was a God, but one of the questions that always stopped me from fully trusting God was, if God is so mighty and powerful, why does God let bad things happen to good people? I remember when I was 8 years old and my parents told me that my mother had breast cancer. I couldn't understand why God would let this happen. In my eyes, my mom was the strongest and most determined person in my life, and to see her struggle with cancer shook me up pretty bad. Gratefully, my mom beat the sickness, and my family was closer because of it. To this day, my mom has been one of my greatest inspirations by not letting cancer beat her down, and always having a strong faith in God, even though she could not see the end result during that time. I saw God's hand work in that time, with the love and support people gave my family, such as homemade dinners or driving Josh and I to activities. But still, I had that doubt in the back of my mind, and that doubt just widened the gap between God and I. More recently, though, my grandpa has gone through a brain surgery and had a tennis ball-sized tumor removed from his brain. Ever since I could remember, my grandfather has been the holiest man and most spiritually balanced person that has ever come into my life. That same question that haunted me over the years was raised again. Why would God let one of his most devoted followers get a deadly sickness? During the days we visited before my grandpa's surgery, it shocked me to see my grandparents were so at peace with the situation and how strong their faith was in God. Even with the threat of death hanging over my grandpa's head, my grandpa's faith was so strong that he wasn't even nervous. When I was visiting him at the hospital, I asked my grandfather how he could be so calm and content before the surgery. He said that he had no real control over the situation and just had to take it for what it was. The only things he could do was trust the doctor's skilled hands and God's healing hand. This was one of the best pieces of wisdom anyone could have given me, and I truly took it to heart. With this advice, I realized as I get confirmed in this church, I don't have to have all my questions answered. Curiosity about God is not a thing to be extinguished during confirmation, but to be celebrated. So in conclusion, I have many questions about God and the faith of Christianity, but as I make this step, I will have plenty of time to figure those questions out.
I should have prefaced this with saying that these young people have been asked to share something with us. We haven't told them what. A reflection that they had after this short confirmation journey, something personal. So they're going to be sharing in different ways, and each of them in their own way. So next up is Sarah Fujiwara.
Okay, so over the past 6 weeks of my confirmation, something that stood out to me was something that stood out to me was heaven, so I created a movie about heaven and what I thought it was about. So. Heaven. In my journey in life, I often wonder what heaven is like. I think heaven is a beautiful place located above the earth. It is always sunny with perfect weather every day. All your favorite countries and cities you love will also be in heaven. In heaven, everyone is kind, friendly, and loving. There are no bad people or sick pets. You can eat all your favorite foods. I plan to eat a lot of sushi and steak. For people who like shopping like I do, You'll be able to go to all your favorite stores, buy anything you want, and you will not need money. The last thing I think what heaven is like is if I can see my loved ones that have passed away. Special thanks to Callie Takagi for being my confirmation mentor.
Tristan Lovestrand.
First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Shima for being my confirmation mentor. When I first came to this church, I didn't really know what to expect. I could tell that it wasn't like Queen of All Saints because everyone was so warm and friendly to me, even though I was a complete stranger. There were a lot of great first impressions, such as when everyone greeted me with such kind care, friendly faces, and especially specific things like Brandyn's sermons. Those really made a big impact on me because they were so powerful, and he related things that were back then to current times. Also, passing the peace really made a big impact on me because back when we used to go to Queen of All Saints, it would just be about 5 to 10 seconds of shaking the person's hand behind you or in front of you or to the side. In this, we would all walk down the aisle and shake everyone's hand. Also, the choir especially made a big impact on me because they would sing so beautifully songs that used to seem boring to me back in Queen of All Saints. It just really made me feel like I was part of a community. One of the most impacting things that happened to me at this church was when Mr. Shima gave his sermon. He told his story, and it made me feel that everyone was basically family to each other because he didn't care what other people thought, he just wanted to share it. It was also really powerful to me and made me feel like I was part of a community. I feel very differently about church now. It doesn't feel like a chore anymore. It's almost kind of like second nature. I don't know how I feel about religion yet, but I have been started on my journey because of this church.
Karen Fujiwara.
So it is Mother's Day today, so I dedicate this to all the mothers, and especially my mom, as well as my mentor, Auntie Yaki. So I will be graduating 8th grade this year, entering high school next year. Probably the most exciting and the scariest years of my life. I want to become an engineer, and the first step to achieve this goal is doing well in high school. I wanted to challenge myself, so I had applied for one of the courses in high school called STEM Community, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And I really wanted to get in, and it might have helped me reach my goal of becoming an engineer. The process of getting in was creating a 1-minute video about myself, filling out questions, and I was so confident that I would get in. I was so disappointed when I heard the news that I didn't get in, and some of my friends who applied did. I felt like I did it wrong. I kept putting myself down for not getting in, and I was really feeling really stressed out and depressed. Not only that, but I also felt jealous of all of my other friends for getting in. I didn't want to be the one left behind. I also didn't want to let my parents down. Through this confirmation journey, I learned that we should believe in what we want to. I reached out to God, and He gave me reassurance that I can make things better. I'm not going to sit around and pray and hope that God will fix everything. Instead, I'm going to take charge of my own life and work hard to achieve my goals with the help of God, along with the support of the friends and family here at the church.
Kara Fujiwara.
shows my thoughts and what I learned during this confirmation class because I love art, especially painting. When I started out, I had no idea about what I was going to do or really anything we were going to talk about. But as the weeks passed by, I started thinking of questions like, is there really a heaven and a hell? If not, where do we go? Do we experience another life after death? And have I lived before? My experience in this class has really helped my understanding of God, and that's why I think that God watches all of us. And before I painted this, I thought to myself, if he watches and cares for all of us, why does he let bad things happen? And my answer to that is because he's testing us. He wants us to all work together and figure it out because it's all about teamwork. Overall, I actually ended up enjoying this and can't wait to learn more.
And lastly, Jake Wellstrom.
First off, I would like to thank Brandon, Robbie, and Elaine for helping us through this confirmation process. Each class taught us something new, and not necessarily only in terms of history or actual facts, but spiritually as well. I would also like to thank Mr. Shima and all the rest of the mentors who helped us on a personal note through sharing experiences that we had, introducing us to new and different styles of worship or life, and just transferring their wisdom overall. Both the classes and Mr. Shima showed me that confirmation is not something that has to be specific to a certain way of thinking, as there was an emphasis on the experience or journey with God throughout the entire process. This leads to the project that I thought would best represent my relationship with God at this point in my life. So here's a picture of a few of the red rocks in Sedona, Arizona. And what I would like to talk about in the presentation is how my experience being in the area with these rocks, just the experience of being around this area is similar to my journey with God. So it might kind of seem like a fuzzy connection right now, but I'll explain it. So this is a picture of two of the rocks that are said to have something called vortex energy. The first one represents the male vortex, like on the left, while the second one represents like a feminine vortex. This is said to symbolize a sort of yin-yang balance between male and female in the spiritual world. And this is a place in Sonoma called the Chapel of the Holy Cross. It just seemed like a really great place because it's a chapel and it's also around in such a beautiful area. And these are like rocks, and like each like little like rock or something was said to like people like have like a certain like connection with it. All right, so here again is the picture of the feminine vortex that I talked about in the previous slide. And so like the vortex energy is kind of just something that the people in the area said like makes you feel like spiritually really well, kind of connected with the landscape and stuff. So while I was exploring around this rock, there was a point in which I drifted off by myself, and I felt as if I really was like absorbing and feeling this so-called vortex energy. The serenity of the beautiful, majestic landscape, combined with the far-off song of someone playing the pan flute in the distance, gave me a feeling of spiritual splendor that I never felt before in my life. It was a feeling of spiritual stability, but it was also instability because this feeling came from a sense of wonder, not from a sense of knowing. At that moment, there was such a sense of bewilderment and awe that overcame all else. Never before had I been so at peace with the mystery of the world. This is what I believe my relationship with God to be at this point in my life. I do not know the way in which God works, nor can I claim to. However, I know that God is great, God is wonderful, and that God is taking me on a journey with Him wherever we go. Am I confirmed in the sense that I understand God and know which path He wants me to choose? I do not believe so. I am confirmed in the sense that I am at peace. I am at peace with the mystery of the world, the wonder of the universe, the glory of God. God is mysterious, and through confirmation, He is taking me on a journey, and I believe we will continue this journey throughout life and beyond. While we do not know God, we do know some of His qualities. God loves us and always will, no matter how much we sadden Him or sin against Him. At times we get mad at God, even though we know how much He cares for us, because we do not understand why He does certain things to us. However, at the end of the day, our relationship with God is stronger than any other, because He has given us life, and He has given us unconditional love. I don't know about the rest of you, but this sounds very familiar to me. By familiar, I mean the literal definition of familiar, in close friendship, intimate, family. What I mean by this is that God is like our mothers. Mothers have cared for us our whole lives and will always love us no matter what. They give us unconditional love even when we push them to the brink. They brought us into the world and they will be with us in spirit when we pass on into the next. We will not be able to live our lives without them. We get mad at them sometimes even though we know that they know better. We sin against them just as we sin against God. But the common denominator is unconditional love. So I know that my mother loves me. To me, this is what it means to have a relationship with God. We can be at peace with the mystery and wonder of God because we know He loves His children unconditionally, just like our mothers. Let us appreciate our mothers every day, not just on Mother's Day. Let us worship God every day, not just on Sundays and holidays. God is the greatest above all else ever. Let us praise Him above all else ever, every day. Through confirmation, our journey with God is not ended, it has just begun. Thank you.
Wow. I have to say, there was a lot of uncertainty during this process, within me too. And I know there was a lot of nerves even the mentors and the parents and the stress in getting to this point. But as I was listening just now, listen to the themes that came out. Wonder, journey, community, love, support, hope, questioning, disappointment, God, prayer, sharing, learning, teamwork. That's it, right? It really pushed them, and sometimes we're afraid to push our kids, but it did push them to listen and to reflect, particularly this week, I think, and to integrate. I am so honored and proud. Thank you for having the courage to share today. Great.
Got anything to say, Robbie, before we call up the mentors? Thought you were going to get away with it.